Hey everyone, welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be looking at something really incredible, how the Lord leads the restoration of his church. And to help us with this, we're going to be diving into President Henry B. Eyring's talk. He goes before us from April 2020 General Conference.
Yeah, it's a really powerful talk. And what I find so interesting about it is how President Eyring connects these historical events to our lives today, Like he shows us that the same God who led the restoration is just as involved in our lives right now.
Okay, so let's I don't know, imagine ourselves back in time. It's April 3rd, 1836. The Kirtland Temple's just been dedicated. There's all this energy. And Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery received this amazing vision. What an incredible setting, right?
Okay.
What exactly did they see?
President Eyring describes it really vividly. Joseph and Oliver see the Lord himself standing on this pulpit of pure gold, and his eyes are like flames of fire, his hair is white as snow, and his voice, oh, it sounds like rushing waters.
Wow, that must have been absolutely amazing. But what was the significance of this appearance, beyond just how magnificent it was?
It wasn't just a show. The Lord was making some really big declarations. He said that he accepted the Kirtland Temple, promised forgiveness to Joseph and Oliver, and said that everyone who helped build the temple would receive blessings in the future.
It makes you think about how we're building his kingdom today, doesn't it? Temple work, missions, even just being kind to people. It's all part of it.
Totally. And then the Lord promised that he would show himself to his people in the temple if they kept his commandments.
So it was about more than just dedicating a building. It was about making a space where you could really feel his presence. And the vision doesn't stop there, does it?
No, it gets even more incredible. Moses, Elias, and Elijah all appear and give specific priesthood keys to Joseph and Oliver. This is huge because it lays the foundation for the gathering of Israel and the sealing power, which are so important to the restoration.
It's always made me wonder why they appeared separately. What do you think about that?
I think it's really interesting. To me, it shows how carefully the Lord works. He doesn't just do everything at once. He leads the restoration step by step, very precisely.
Like he has this plan, this blueprint.
Exactly. And each of these figures brought back keys that are essential to the Lord's plan.
Let's talk about what each of them restored. Moses, what did he bring back?
Moses restored the keys of the gathering of Israel. He's the one who's given the authority to gather God's people from all over the world, even the 10 tribes from the land of the north.
That's a powerful reminder that God's plan is for everyone, no matter where they come from.
Yes, exactly. And then Elias.
Okay, I'm actually curious about Elias.
Elias committed the dispensation of the gospel of Abraham. This is important because it emphasizes how important the Abrahamic covenant is. It shows that God's blessings aren't just for a specific group of people, but for everyone who accepts the gospel, for you, the listener.
So it's like expanding those promises to include everyone who wants to follow him.
Precisely. And finally, we have Elijah. His return was prophesied in the Old Testament, and he's central to temple work. He restored the sealing power.
Now, for anyone listening who's maybe not as familiar with this, what exactly does that mean? Why is it so important?
The sealing power is the authority to bind families together forever. It changes everything because it shows that families are eternal and that temple work is how we connect generations.
It puts family front and center, not just for this life, but forever.
It's an amazing doctrine, and it all connects back to those keys restored in the Kirtland Temple.
It's incredible, isn't it? All these events that seem separate are actually woven together. The Kirtland Temple, restoring the priesthood keys, gathering Israel. It's like pieces of a giant puzzle. It makes you wonder what the Lord's putting together in our lives right now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's fascinating. What I find really interesting is that the Lord didn't reveal all of this at once. It was a step-by-step process, revealing his will as his people were ready. And he does the same for us in our lives today.
I love how you're bringing that back to our own lives. You're right. He's just as involved now as he was back then. But how did this vision set the stage for what came next in the restoration? I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, that's where things get even more exciting. In the next part, we'll talk about how the Lord's plan led to the church growing so rapidly, especially those early missions to the British Isles and Scandinavia.
This is already blowing my mind. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back after a quick break to delve deeper into President Eyring's insights. We're back and still digging into the restoration. Something that really struck me from our last conversation was how the Lord had this whole blueprint, this plan, and was revealing it piece by piece.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. And in his talk, President Eyring actually gives some really cool examples of how the Lord was preparing everything for the gathering of Israel, even before the keys were
Oh,
restored.
yeah, like he was already building the road before sending the traffic down it. What were some of those things he was doing to prepare the way?
Well, like years before the keys of the gathering were restored in Kirtland, he'd already told Joseph Smith all about missionary work and gathering his people.
Wow. So he was kind of planting those seeds, getting them ready for something they couldn't even fully grasp yet.
Exactly. And get this, he even told church leaders to wait to restore certain keys, like the keys of the gathering, until after the Kirtland Temple was finished.
That's incredible. It's like there was a divine schedule,
Yeah.
everything happening in a specific order, like an orchestra.
Totally. And it wasn't just the spiritual stuff either. He was also preparing the world. Think about the political climate back then, how transportation was changing, communication, all of that. It's like he was lining things up to make it easier to gather Israel.
I never thought about it like that. It's like weaving a tapestry, all the little details coming together to create something beautiful.
And those early missions, especially to the British Isles and Scandinavia, thousands joined the church in a short amount of time.
It's mind-blowing when you consider how difficult travel was back then. Crossing the ocean, trying to start a church in a totally different culture, dealing with opposition.
Yeah.
How did they do it?
Well, that's where President Eyring's message comes in. He says the Lord already knew it would be successful, that he'd prepared the way. It wasn't just luck, it was divine orchestration.
It makes you think, Maybe when we feel lost in our own lives, unsure what to do, the Lord's already working things out behind the scenes, getting us ready.
That's such a great insight. It's all about trusting, his timing, knowing he's always a step ahead.
It's reassuring, especially when the world feels so chaotic sometimes.
The Lord doesn't just prepare the way, he also gives us tools to help us. Like FamilySearch is a perfect example. President Eyring oversaw its development for a while.
Yes, I was so interested to hear about that. At first you might think it's just for genealogy records, but it's so much bigger than that, isn't it?
Yeah. It really shows how the Lord can take something seemingly simple and make it amazing. Remember, it all started because the first presidency was worried about keeping track of temple work, making sure ordinances weren't being duplicated.
Right. It makes sense from a logistical standpoint.
But it evolved so much. President Eyring said he felt more like an overseer than a director because so many people contributed. It was a team effort, guided by revelation.
It's a great example of teamwork, isn't it? The Lord can accomplish incredible things when we work together.
And it brought people together in so many ways, connecting them to their ancestors, but also across generations. President Eyring talked about how young people became tech support for their parents and grandparents using FamilySearch.
I love that. Technology, combined with the spirit of Elijah, can really strengthen families.
It shows how the Lord works in unexpected ways. Who could have predicted that a tool to prevent duplication would become something that changes how we connect with our families and do temple work?
It's so much more than just names and dates. It's about that spirit of Elijah, feeling those connections and understanding that we're all part of something much bigger.
Exactly. It's about being part of God's eternal family.
It's a great reminder that technology can be a powerful tool for good, especially when it's inspired by the Lord.
We can get so caught up in technology and its distractions, but President Eyring's talk reminds us that the Lord can use anything to accomplish his work.
That includes us. Just like he used those early saints, he can use us to share our testimonies and serve others.
We all have unique gifts and talents he can use. We're each part of that tapestry he's weaving.
And that brings us back to the heart of President Eyring's message. The Lord leads the restoration, step by step. He prepares the way, inspires his people, and makes it all happen. But it's not just about the past, is it?
No, it's about us today. The question is, what do these examples of the Lord leading the restoration teach us about our own lives? How does it strengthen our faith in his guidance, especially when we face hard times? How can we see his hand in our own journey?
Wow, that's a really powerful question. Something to really think about. Wow, we've covered so much ground today. It's just incredible to see how the Lord orchestrated the restoration so carefully, always there, guiding his people.
It really is amazing. And as we wrap up our look at President Eyring's talk, we need to remember this isn't just ancient history. It's about recognizing that the same God who led the restoration is just as active in our lives today.
Yeah, it's easy to look at those huge events and be like, wow, so powerful. But then we go back to our lives and forget that same power is with us right now.
You're so right. And to me, one of the biggest things President Eyring emphasizes is the Lord's patience. He doesn't expect us to be perfect overnight. He works with us step by step.
He lets us learn and grow at our own pace. Oh, and there's this quote I love from President Eyring. He says, he's always been lovingly patient in helping us learn line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little and there a little. It's so true. It's a journey, not a destination.
I love that. We're all works in progress, and the Lord is gently guiding us to become the best versions of ourselves. He sees our potential and is happy when we're trying.
It makes me think about those times when I've felt so discouraged. Maybe I was praying for something and it just didn't seem to be happening. But now looking back, I see how the Lord was working things out, preparing me for something even better.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes it feels like we're looking at the back of a tapestry. It's all tangled threads, and we're like, what is going on? But he sees the whole picture, the beautiful design, and knows what he's doing.
It's a great reminder to just trust in his timing, even when things don't make sense to us.
And remember, just as he prepared those early saints to share the gospel, he's doing the same for us, preparing us to fulfill our missions in life. He knows everything about us, and he uses all of it to help us become who we're meant to be.
This makes me think about how the Lord prepared Joseph Smith. I mean, he didn't just randomly decide to translate the Book of Mormon one day. The Lord spent years preparing him, teaching him, building his faith, getting him ready for that huge responsibility.
Such a good example. And he's doing the same for us, you know. He gives us chances to learn and grow and serve. He puts people in our lives to help us, and he opens doors we might not even see.
So how can we become more aware of those opportunities? How do we get better at recognizing his guidance?
It all starts with trying to understand what his will is. We have to pray, really talk to him, tell him everything that's on our minds. But then we have to listen. Pay attention to the promptings of the Spirit. Those quiet feelings, nudges in your heart, those sudden ideas, that's how he talks to us.
And those promptings, sometimes they lead us in directions we don't expect, right? We might feel called to do things that seem scary or too hard. That's when faith is so important.
You're exactly right. The Lord doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. He doesn't expect us to know everything before we start. He just wants us to be willing to try.
We need to trust that he'll give us the strength and the help and the resources we need. He performed miracles to restore his church, and he can work miracles in our lives too.
So as we finish up, think about this. How can we take what we've learned today about God's guidance, his patience, how he prepares us, and use it in our own lives? How can we really understand that? He goes before us, making the path and helping us become who we're meant to be.
That's a great question to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this amazing journey. We hope you've gained a deeper understanding of the Lord's hand in the restoration and in your own life. Until next time, keep searching, keep learning, and keep diving deep.